it's his gig.
Yeah, some of our favorite vegetables. So we're going to talk just briefly about grilling vegetables and some of our favorite things that are really quite easy. And the goal of this whole thing is to show you how very easy it is to grill good at home, to be a good grill. And you've already heard some of the other things, some of the basics of grilling in a previous video. So we'll skip all that and just get down to it. The biggest thing, we talked about before, is marinades, flavors, and your ingredients and what you're doing with them. You got to start with the right thing, otherwise you're not going to end with the right thing. So, one of the things that Molly and I often, I don't know if we disagree on it, but she does a lot of the prep around the house and I do a lot of the cooking. And, she oftentimes cuts these paper thin little zucchini slices, and then by the time one side is grilled, it's like a zucchini chip. Isn't it, Molly?
It is.
And, one of the important things is cutting, fairly thick pieces so you can grill it really good on the outside and still get it soft and tender and juicy on the inside, because nothing worse than over-grilled, dried out vegetables. So when I cut my zucchinis, I always like to cut them at an angle. Part of it is just the years in the hospitality business making it look good. Whether you cut them straight across or an angle or not is not nearly as important as how thick they are. So I usually cut at least 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 inch thick. You can zoom that in there, Molly.
That's our zucchini.
And again, the purpose of this is to be able to really get some good grill marks and some good grilling on each side of it, and still not have it completely well done in the middle, because as you know, these are all vegetables that you can eat raw, so the less cooking, the less heat, the less destroying of the nutrients, which are so important, because we're not only grilling, we're trying to grill
healthy food. Yeah, we sometimes, disagree on a few of these things because everything's better with butter and bacon.
We don't disagree, we just agree on how much butter. If you see a big spoon of butter going into a pot I'm making, you forget that that's enough to feed 20 people. So, maybe each person gets 1/4 of a tablespoon of butter. So,
but we're focused on a little bit cleaner grilling right now.
Absolutely.
So we're going to use extra virgin olive oil when we get that prepared. Bill's going to the fridge for a sec.
Going to the freezer.
Freezer.
Anyhow, what I did here is I just chopped these zucchini nice and thin. I shouldn't say nice and thin, that's what Molly does. They're nice and thick, actually. And I have extra virgin olive oil all the time. I'm going to toss in there a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. Now, this is an important thing. Salt dries everything out. Salt pulls moisture out of things. That's the way of curing things. Years ago, before refrigeration, they cured everything. So, and then you put salt on something, you be prepared to cook it fairly quickly, especially vegetables. If you throw salt on there and let it set for 1/2 an hour even, you'll have a bowl full of water, especially zucchini that has so much liquid or water in it. And one of the things we always have that's real important is peppermint. We have this light one here for white pepper. Over there I have a dark one.
What's the difference, honey?
Black pepper, black and white. White pepper tends to be milder, and white pepper is just black pepper without the outside husk or the hard outside piece. So the black outside tends to be more spicy and more pungent. So this is a milder flavor. We use both depending on what we're doing. My favorite go-to herbs that we use pretty routinely here at the house, and I chop a bunch of them up and throw them in the freezer. We can freeze herbs. You buy things in the store that are dried. God knows how long they've been in that bottle and how much flavor's left on them. And some of the bigger things, you buy dried rosemary, and it's like straw trying to eat it and everything. So we have a mixture of thyme, parsley, and rosemary, which is my go-to herbs for years, especially for grilling. It's about 50% thyme chopped up, 50% parsley chopped up, about 30% thyme chopped up, and then 10-20% rosemary, because the rosemary is the strongest, so we put the least amount in there. We're going to sprinkle the rosemary, thyme, and parsley on there, and we're just going to mix this. We've already put salt and pepper on it. We could throw a little bit of garlic on there, but I just realized I don't have any garlic, so we're just going to pretend like I'm adding some garlic right now. Boom, garlic flavor.
Not garlic salt, right?
Fresh garlic is always best if you have it. If you have to use a store-bought garlic, and nowadays you can buy peeled garlic in the store all the time. But
Trader Joe's has it, and it's super cheap, and they're like a bunch of them that you can just...
And one of the things I do with garlic all the time, we'll buy a lot of it peeled, or we'll peel it and throw it in a processor, throw it in a blender with olive oil and blend it. And we keep it in the freezer all the time. We have some in the freezer, but it's hard as a rock, so I don't want you to see me trying to dig that out. But we put a lot of things in the freezer that are fresh, because then we know they went in the freezer fresh. We know how old they are, how long they've been in there, and we know what we're using. So little garlic on here is great. If you needed to use some dried product, use garlic powder or granulated garlic is best. don't use garlic salt. You don't need the added protein or sodium and everything that goes with it. So we've got some zucchini there marinated. We're going to quickly chop up a bell pepper. And bell peppers, there's a couple different things you can do with them. I tend to like red and yellow the most, and you may or may not know this, but the
Watch
bell pepper,
him chop the pepper.
the bell pepper changes color as it ripens on the vine. So a green one is an unripe bell pepper. Red ones or yellow ones are ripened ones that have changed colors on the vine, so they're sweeter. And if you just notice what I did there very quickly without even thinking about it, I cut the ends of it off, I slid it down the side there, and then you can open it up and pull the seeds out of it. You can pull the inside out, cut a little bit more of the vein out, and depending on what you're going to do with it, you'll cut a lot of the vein out, or maybe just a little bit of the vein. And when it comes to grilling, you can actually throw this right on the grill like that. There's nothing wrong with that. And after you pull it out, you can throw some flavor on there. You can sprinkle a little balsamic on it, a little bit of olive oil. When you put it right on the grill like this, the outside skin will get really flaky and come off. And if you do that and eat it like that, you'll end up with a lot of burnt pepper skin in your mouth. So with that in mind, I tend to just toss in a little bit of olive oil. I'm going to throw a little seasoning and herbs on there. There's a little bit of herbs left in the bowl there, so I didn't add a whole lot more. But we'll have that ready to go on the grill. And the final thing we're going to do real quickly is asparagus. And asparagus is about the most difficult of all the things to grill because it's thin and it's long and it falls through the grates when you're grilling. So we're going to talk about that later. But I always cut the ends of them off depending on how big your asparagus is. That'll depend on how much you cut off because this is the end it gets really, really woody. If you want to get really fancy, instead of just cutting them all off at once like that, you can cut them out an angle like that there so it looks really neat if you're doing a nice presentation. But we just will cut them off for now. And oftentimes if I'm doing a lot of asparagus, I'll set it out in a pan so it's easier to get them all marinated and ready for grilling without messing them up because we really want to lay them on the grill in one row to make it easy to grill them. I'm going to put the same herbs, salt, pepper on there, and I'm going to mix it really good. And the one thing we're going to make sure we do is try to keep them all facing the same way because again, it's just really, really easy to grill it that way. We're going to line them out like that. They're going to be ready to go. When we come back, we'll be outside on the grill cooking them up. Thanks a lot. So we're back in the kitchen here in this series called Grilling with Me.
Great Grilling.
Great Grilling with
Bill,
Me.
No, not with me, with Bill Bracken.
Absolutely, that is me though, right?
That's you.
All right, we're going to talk about marinades and flavors for a second here. And whenever I think about marinades and meat, I'm taken back instantly to a country club in St. Joe, Missouri when I was about 18 years old and had been cooking for a number of years. But volunteered one night as part of our school for a big event, and I watched the chef sear off about 450 filet mignons, beautiful filet mignons wrapped with bacon. Not healthy for this series, but typical Midwestern thing of bacon wrapped fillets. Seared them off beautifully, and then I watched him throw them all in a big pan. And I was still a novice at cooking. I've been cooking for a few years, but I do know filet mignon and how tender it is and how quick and easy it is to cook it. So I watched him throw these in several big roasting pans, and he got out a couple gallons for each roasting pan of Italian dressing, just dumped it all over the steaks, and threw this whole thing in the oven. He braised these filet mignons in an oven and Italian dressing out of a jar. I'm sure it's full of corn syrup and all these different things. And I never tried one that night, but I'm just thinking, oh my God, here's this beautiful filet mignon that you just braised, which is something you do for tougher pieces of meat. But I brought this, told you this quick story because, when it comes to marinades and grilling and marinating and all these things, you have to think about what you're doing, what the end goal is, not just flavor, but health and all these things. And, I also told that story because if you're not into all this, and this is really simple, and that's our goal here to show you that it is really easy to make good, tasty food at home, even if you don't have a culinary education. But you can go to your grocery store, go to Whole Foods or someplace like that. That's not an endorsement for Whole Foods. I'm not getting paid a commission here. Although if they wanted to send a check to Bracken's Kitchen, we'd take it.
Sure, yeah.
But, go get your favorite salad dressing, a healthy one, a lighter one, all natural. And use that for marinade. You don't want to deal with soy and sesame. You don't have all those ingredients. Go buy an Asian dressing. It's great on fish. So we're going to do a couple of quick marinades here. One for Asian style and one our go-to favorite at our house for our meat tonight, because we're going to grill off a little bit later on some flat iron steaks, my favorite piece of meat here. And we will have some recipes up and on the website, or not on the website, but on the Facebook page later. So don't worry, I'm just going by eye because it's what we do. But two different marinades here, one Asian one. I'm going to do that real quickly, and we're just going to squeeze a little bit of orange juice in the pan here.
He makes that look super easy, right?
I'm sorry?
Just slicing and squeezing.
That's
Super
all it is,
easy,
slice
that's
and
all it
squeeze.
is.
We'll
It just
use
takes
our
the
hands.
rest of the free world like 10 times longer to do it. That's all.
Why is that?
Maybe 5 times longer.
Okay.
Because we didn't do it for 30 years every
30 years?
day. Am I wrong?
That's true. So I put a little soy sauce in there. I'm sorry, I put a little lemon juice or orange juice in there. You got me all flustered now.
Sorry.
We're going to put a touch of soy sauce in there. And this is
Low sodium.
low sodium, less sodium, 37% less, because we want to be healthy. As a result, it really isn't nearly as strong as regular soy sauce. So be aware of that, but it is lower than sodium. And I've put just about equal amounts of lemon or orange juice and soy sauce in there. So that sweetness of the orange really balances out that salty, savory flavor of the soy. Then we're going to throw a little sesame oil in there. And those are the 3 ingredients. That's it we're going to put in there.
Why sesame oil?
Sesame oil, it's got a great flavor. We're going with that Asian flavor, needless to say. It's healthy. It's a better oil for you than salad oil or corn oil, but the main thing is the flavor. So we didn't put a lot in there. I know Molly always watches me pouring oil in things, and she's like, oh, it's too much oil. But you got to remember, piece of meat, it's just like our skin. We rub oil on ourselves, suntan lotion, something, doesn't soak in. We don't just get fat and gain weight because we rub some oil on our skin. So the meat is the same way. It's not going to, the oil is not going to seep into the meat. When you blend oil and to make a dressing, you're ingesting all that oil. Most of this oil, when you marinate something, you'll obviously consume some of those calories that stick to the meat when you cook it, but most of that oil either burns off or it never even gets in the bowl when we're done marinating. So that's really very simple there. Those are the only 3 ingredients we're putting in there. And we're going to quickly make another one, and this time with lemons. This time I got to use my hands to squeeze out the seeds. You know, you can get a lemon juicer, all these things, or you can just use your God-given tools. You can squeeze it, and the seeds are right there, and they don't go in the bowl. And even if they do go in the bowl, in this case, it's okay because it's going to be grilled off. It's not going to be inside the food. So these are these monster lemons from our backyard. It's the first thing I did when I bought my own home. Is put a lemon tree in the back, because I love lemons. We're in California where we can grow them, and it's just great for everything from marinades to salad dressing to anything you might want to squeeze on top of the chicken breast. So in this case, we got some lemon juice in there. We'll throw a little bit of extra virgin olive oil in there. Again, not a lot, but just enough to marinate it. And I'm going to use my favorite go-to spice, which is, this one is our own homemade Cajun spice, but if you don't have Cajun spice, if you're not in the mood to make your own, or any type of spice rubs, you can buy your favorite. My favorite go-to one at the grocery store that we usually have in the house all the time, but I used the last weekend, is Paul Prudhomme. He's the famous chef from New Orleans, Cajun chef. He's got 3 different flavors. A green one's for chicken, a orange or yellow one that's for fish, and a red one for red meat. I buy the green one for chicken and use it on everything, just because it's a nice balance, not too spicy or hot. But this is our easy go-to. I use my Paul Prudhomme spice on our burgers with a little bit of salt, add extra flavor, on fish, you name it. So very quick and easy. And you know, that's it. Again, 2 simple recipes for marinade. We'll come back in a little bit and work on some meat and throw them in the marinade. Again, I just can't emphasize enough, when you think about marinating stuff, all you're trying to do is impart some flavor into your meat, fish, or veg. So if it's something you like and it goes well together, use it. You can take Caesar dressing and throw it on a chicken breast. I'd water it down a little bit, lighten it up a little bit, but put some marinade on, Caesar marinade on, Caesar salad marinade, Caesar dressing on a chicken breast. Let it sit for half an hour and then grill it. You're going to have a great flavored chicken. That's it. Thank you. All right, guys, we are back. Great grilling with me, Chef BB, and we're in the kitchen right now with my favorite cut of meat, which is a flat iron steak. The flat iron comes from the chuck right up around the shoulder of the cow, and it's this one muscle amongst many muscles in the shoulder that is removed and isolated out, that I think is, well, quite frankly, it's my favorite piece of meat. It's a little bit chewier than a New York steak, but if you don't know this, the tougher the piece of meat, always the more flavorful. Tenderloin happens, we spoke about earlier, is the most tender piece of meat on the cow, but it's also the least flavorful because the muscle's just not used. So just like working out and getting healthy, when cows use muscles a lot more and they get tougher and stronger, they also have more flavor. That is why a shank or brisket or some of those pieces of meat have to be cooked so long or braised, because they're very tough. A flat iron is a beautiful piece of meat to grill. It's nice and thin, as you can see here, which again for me makes it great. We have a very, very hectic lifestyle and we're always running around, so throwing a flat iron steak on the grill, cook it in 8-10 minutes if your grill's nice and hot, is quick. So my second favorite thing when it comes to meat is this trusty little meat tenderizer. This one here I got from Chef's Choice here in Fountain Valley. You can go to their website as well and order one if you want. And it's a simple tool with full of lots of knives in it. Absolutely. You see that?
See the knives.
And it tenderizes meat. So if you're cooking carne asada at home, if you're cooking tri-tip, which is popular out here in California, we use this all the time. A few years ago, we had a barbecue joint in Newport Beach called Dive Bar. We use this all day long in our tri-tip. So we're going to make a little noise here, but we're just simply going to go down the length of the meat. You'll see there's a couple bigger pieces of vein in here, so I'm going to go across them a couple times just to help break up the sinew and the muscle in there, so it's a more tender piece of meat.
Don't hit your finger.
Yeah, I've done that a couple times accidentally when I'm in a hurry turning something. So you'll see all sorts of holes in the meat. I don't know if we can zoom in on that, Molly. If you're going to try to bring the camera over here and zoom in all those little holes. Can you see that?
Ooh, little holes in the meat.
And the neat thing about those little holes, it also helps get the flavor inside. Nowadays, it's really hard to buy a piece of chicken, especially that hasn't been injected with saline or salt solution, which is very, very common. And that, does does two things. One, it adds flavor, but two, it also helps companies make a lot more money because they've filled up their chicken with water. Sorry, there's a helicopter flying over. So it weighs more, so they charge more money for water. If you grab the bowls, Molly, the marinades that we made earlier, I'm simply just going to cut this flat iron steak in two. We're going to throw one of them. That's Molly. We're going to throw one of them in the. We made the lemon, olive oil, and Cajun spice marinade, and then we made the soy citrus kind of Asian dressing. So we're simply going to throw this down inside there. We're going to make sure it is mixed real well and well covered. The neat thing about a marinade like this, because we don't have any salt in it, if you remember earlier we talked about how salt dries things out. So depending on how quickly you're going to cook something, you don't want to put salt on there. But this marinade here, you can put it on a few hours ahead of time. You can put it on the night before. The soy sauce does have sodium in it, so it'll tend to dry things out a little bit more. So you're going to be careful that you don't over marinate that or leave it too long. And unless, of course, like we did, we put a lot of olive oil. Not a lot of olive oil. We put a lot of orange juice in there, a little olive oil. Does that make you happy, huh?
Yes, thank you.
It's actually not too bad. I'm going to do something that you're probably going to say is gross, but it's not that strong. It's not that soy sauce strong soy sauce flavor like you'd have with sushi. So both of these could easily set overnight. You could do this, or in the morning, better off in the morning, get them ready, and then throw them in the fridge and let them marinate all day long, and then grill them off for dinner time. And when we come back, we'll be out on the grill.
We're at the grill.
All right, everybody, we're back with great grilling with Chef Bill. Here I am outside of my trusty grill, and we talked in one of the earlier videos about the basics of grilling. One of the things that's so important that I spoke about is the quality of your grill. The biggest problem that people have at home is they don't have the same tools and supplies and ingredients that we have in a professional kitchen. So this baby right here is it's a Vollrath Cayenne. It's a professional grill, but it's a small one. And when we built our little outdoor barbecue, we wanted to put this one in just because it gets really hot. And that's the key to great grilling, is have something that really gets hot. So if you're trying to save a few bucks and going to Walmart and buy an $89 grill, you're going to get an $89 grill. And it's all in the BTUs, how hot it gets. So having said that, we're going to throw the the steaks that we marinated earlier on, and I'm going to talk about that for a couple seconds. These things are going to start smoking up pretty good. And if you remember, we didn't put any salt and pepper on them earlier because we wanted them to marinate. Here's where I got the black pepper out tonight. We used the white pepper on the vegetables. We're using the black on the meat to give it a little bit more umph. We'll put a little salt and pepper on there, and we'll let that cook. And every grill, every oven, every piece of cooking equipment has hot spots and cold spots, no matter how brand new it is, how old it is. I know this grill well enough. I know the hottest spot. So instead of turning one side up, one side down, I just have everything on high. If I'm cooking a really thick piece of meat, I might adjust the temperature. But as you know, these flat irons are nice and thin. So this is the hottest spot on my grill where we're starting the flat irons at. And again, when you have a really hot grill, if you think about a steakhouse like a Ruth Chris or some place like that, New York, Smith & Wollensky's, they got charbroilers that are up to 1200 degrees. So that sears the meat really crispy quickly and get that hard, crusty outside. Because ultimately, when you're cooking any type of food, what you're doing is caramelizing the sugars. When you sear it off, everything has sugar in it. Some more than other natural sugars that are in fruits and vegetables. Meat has some sugars in it. So when you're searing that off in a pan and it's getting brown, it's the sugars that are caramelizing, just as if you're making caramel syrup. So when it comes to meat, you want a really high hot grill so that you really sear it well and get all the flavor out of it. So we've had that on that side for just a couple seconds. A couple minutes actually. We're flipping it over.
That looks
obviously
good.
Got some good grill marks on there already. We're going to do the same thing on this side and let it cook for a while, and then we'll move it over to this side where it's less hot. And then we're going to talk a little bit about one of the biggest challenges cooking at home for novice is timing and everything, so everything comes out at the same time and it's nice and hot and fresh. We'll be back. All right, we are back here. We've been cooking this meat for a few minutes now. As you can see, it's actually shrunk up a lot, which is what meat is when you cook it. It's got a nice golden charred flavor on the outside and color. So we're gonna move this down to this part of the grill where it's less hot. It's a little bit cooler, so we'll finish cooking it there. A lot of people in big restaurants or mass production will sear off meats on the grill and then finish them in an oven just because you have so much to do in so little grill space. We're obviously not doing that tonight. And a few things we want to talk about. Molly, you had a question earlier. What was that?
How can you tell when it's done?
And it's done. Well,
because
you go
my
like this here.
husband goes like that,
And then you get to go like this.
Yeah, and then he knows that it's done. But for the rest of the free world, we don't do that.
Yeah, and I'm going to step aside here and wash my hands off since I just licked my finger. You know, honestly, in my world, you cook so much meat, it really is oftentimes instinct, and you don't even have to feel it. But obviously, when you cook a lot of meat, you can touch it and feel it, But every piece of meat is different. Years ago, I heard things about you could squeeze different parts of your hand here, and this mimics a piece of meat. But again, every muscle is different, so it's going to be different. So the best bet right here is to have a trusty thermometer like this here, and you can test that piece of meat. And a piece of meat like this here, you wouldn't want to stick it in like this because you're not going to get into meat. So you'd want to go into it long ways like this here. So you get right down the middle there, and you're going to see right there that piece of meat is about 125 degrees. Can you see that?
Yep.
And to give you an idea, and you can Google it online if you're not sure, but 125, 130 degrees, or I'm sorry, 115 to 120 degrees is a rare piece of meat. 130 is...
Okay, so we were talking about temperatures when my phone cut off. Sorry, honey.
That's the iPhone. It's all good. Yeah, we were talking about temperatures, and I showed you the thermometer. If you didn't see that, if you're cutting sticking a thin piece of meat, stick it into the end here so you really get the thermometer all the way on the inside. And you can Google this, but the kind of rule or the guideline is about 120 degrees is a rare piece of meat. 125, 130 is medium rare. 140 medium, 150 medium well, 160 well done. That varies from person to person, place to place. People have different ideas what a rare piece of meat is. So anyhow, the most important thing here now is now that we got this meat almost to the temperature we want, we're going to start throwing our veg on the grill here because the goal is to really get everything cooked and done at the same time. And nothing worse than a piece of meat getting cold while the vegetables are being cooked or vice versa. So, if you have a small home grill, one of the things that we often do in our kitchens at work is in order to retain some heat or regain some heat if we've lost some heat from cooking things, we'll take a sheet pan, not unlike this one here, and we'll turn it upside down on the grill. And by doing that, You're just kind of locking in the heat and helping the grill to heat up quicker. So I'm going to move these a little bit over because we want to throw the asparagus on here, and I'm going to pull the meat off as well. I'm going to tell you why in just a second. So the asparagus always falls. We going to lay it all out like that there, if you can see that. I'm not sure, Molly, if you can see the asparagus down there. But obviously I'm used to the heat a little bit more than someone else. So
Like me.
Like you. But what I've done here is I've put the tips of the asparagus in the coolest spot, the ends of it in the hottest spot, because the tips are going to cook really quickly. And one of the most important things about meat that I wanted to make sure you're aware of is allowing a piece of meat to rest. When you're cooking a piece of meat, the heat forces all the blood from the meat into the middle. And if you slice this piece of meat right now, all that blood in the middle is just going to run out. So you want it to set several minutes. Something this small, you'd like to set 6, 8, 10 minutes max. So it rests a little bit and the blood redistributes. Then you slice it, you're going to have a beautiful medium rare, medium piece of meat. So many times a piece of meat comes off the grill, goes on a plate, someone cuts it, next thing they have a pool of juice in the middle of the plate, and then they complain their meat's overdone. Well, the meat wasn't overdone, it was just all the juice ran out of it. So it's really important that you let it rest for a couple minutes, and that goes for any piece of meat, even a piece of chicken. It may be completely cooked because you don't serve chicken medium rare, but it's still juicy, and if you cut it when it's hot, all that juice is going to run out. So real important. We got the vegetables cooking here. We'll be right back in a second and talk about finishing them up. All right, we're back with these vegetables, and I can tell just by looking at the edges of them, they're starting to grill really well. Of course, if you're not sure, you can just take a peek and look at it and see how it looks, but you'll see down around the edges of it, it starts to brown or blister a little bit. There's one right there, so you can tell it's really getting nice and grilled, and you don't even have to look at it. You can see those are beautiful grill marks right there. It's nicely cooked, and you know, one thing that I encourage you with vegetables, don't overcook them. Any type of vegetables, any way you're cooking with, especially on the grill, because again, all these vegetables are vegetables that you can eat raw: the crudité, zucchini, asparagus, bell peppers. So really what we want to do is keep all that freshness and healthiness that's in there. Don't kill all the nutrients. So by just, you know, grilling the outside of it with a little bit of the olive oil and herbs, everything we got, you're imparting a great grilled flavor, but you're holding on to a lot of the nutrients, and that's so important. And you know, that's why it's important to have a really good hot grill, because otherwise you're cooking it a long time. So the hotter the better. One of my tricks with asparagus, instead of trying to pick all this asparagus up and flip it around, if you're not comfortable with that, get some plastic gloves or something, but I just roll it from one side to the other, and yes, those are hot, but that's a quick and easy way to roll them around and move them from one side to the other. We have grills in the kitchen that are usually at an angle, so oftentimes we have asparagus rolling down the grill, so I'll oftentimes stick 1 or 2 of them like this here, just have a chunk of carrot there to keep it from rolling down the grill when it's at an angle. We're going to let these cook for a couple more minutes, then they're going to be done, and Molly and I are going to sit down and eat. So thanks so much for joining us today. Hopefully you picked up a couple tips, and we will see you
again tomorrow.
again tomorrow. All right, have a great night. Bye-bye.